Alright, today we're doing section 6.5. It's all about the division rule for exponents, so that is our goal, to simplify expressions using this division rule. So first we're going to see if we can figure out what the division rule is, and then we're going to see if we can follow it. Do you have a question? Alright, so these examples are already on your notes, so just read along with the notes as I'm reading it from the board. So it says, in order to understand the division rule for exponents, we can investigate what is really going on. Two examples are given below. So in your notes, you can follow through these two examples step by step. So on the left will be the x example. On the right will be the AB example. So I'll just talk you through the x example first. This is x to the fifth over x to the second. So x to the fifth divided by x to the second. If you write it out, you have 5 x's on the top and 2 x's on the bottom. Does everyone see that on their own notes?
Yeah.
Alright, any number over itself is a 1. Remember, we just talked about that in the warm-up. So these 2 x's are going to make a 1. These 2 x's are going to make a 1. So I'm left with how many x's?
3.
Okay, so everyone followed up to here, right? I'm going to pause and go through the other problem, and then we'll get all the answers at once. Here I have a's and b's. 1 A on the top, 4 B's, 7 A's on the bottom, 3 B's. Just like I did on the last one, you can cancel them out. So A over A becomes a 1, B over B becomes a 1, B over B becomes a 1, and B over B becomes a 1. So everyone followed up through step 2 with both examples? All right. Check out step number 3. We're just going to rewrite what we have left. So all the x's turned into 1s. And remember, multiplying by a 1 is not really changing anything. So we're just left with 3 x's. And on the bottom, there's just a 1 as a placeholder. Same thing on the other one. We have just a b left on the top, and then we have 6 a's in the bottom. Everybody still following? Alright, so for the x example, x times x over 1 can be written as just x to the third. Over here we have a b on top, and we have 6 a's on the bottom, so that's a to the 6th. And there are answers. Any questions?
This is so simple.
That's more of a comment. So, has anyone figured out what the rule is?
No.
Alright, let's rewrite what we had. So we had a to the 5th over, or sorry, x to the 5th over x to the 2nd, and I got x to the 3rd. With the A's and B's, what was it? A. Read me what the A problem was from the top. A.
You talking about the A before?
Yeah. AB to the 4th.
Over A to the 7th. B to the 3rd.
Alright. And we ended up with B to the 1st over A to the 6th. Is that right? Alright, so take a look at those and see if you can figure out what was going on. What did they do with the exponents to simplify? Yeah, so whenever we're doing this, the division rule is just to subtract the exponents with the same base. So we're going to subtract the exponents with the same base, and then we're going to leave the leftovers. Where the bigger exponent started. And I'll explain more about what that second bullet point means. But the first thing we want to do is we're going to subtract the exponents with the same base. So x's go with x's, y's go with y's, a's go with a's. Subtract the exponents, and then you're going to write your leftovers wherever the bigger exponent was. So if you started with more x's in the top, your answer goes in the top. If you started with more x's in the bottom, your x answer goes in the bottom. So you just put the leftovers where you had more of that particular variable to begin with. So we have y to the fourth on top, y to the third on the bottom. So if you wrote it out, you'd have 4 y's on top, you'd have 3 y's on bottom. If you crossed them out in pairs, we'll just do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Cross them out in pairs. What do we have left? In the top, right? So you could put it over 1 if you wanted, but you know any number over 1 is just itself, so you can just leave it like this. You could put y to the first if you want. It's really up to you. Now, I do not have time in my life to be writing out all these variables for every single problem. So you can follow the rule that we just wrote down. What is 4 minus 3? 1. You don't have to write anything out. You can just do 4 minus 3. That gives you 1. Y to the first is your answer. You had more y's in the top, so your answer goes in the top. You can put a 1 as the placeholder, but any number over 1 is just that number, so it's not needed. This variable, or this exponent of 1 is not needed either. Alright, questions on number 1. Alright, check out number 2. We have c to the 8th and c to the 4th. So subtract the 8 and the 4, you get c to the 4th. Technically, it's over 1, right? We had more c's in the top, so my answer goes in the top. Do you need to write a number over a 1? It's not necessary. It'd be writing like 3 over 1 is just 3. We all know that. Same thing here. You can just write c to the 4th. What are your questions so far? Alright, let's go on to number 3. Now, I'm missing an exponent in the bottom. What do I know is there? A 1. So x to the 4th over x to the 1st. X to the 3rd. Very good. You can put it on top of a 1 if you want, or you can leave it like that. It's the same thing. Alright, now number 4, I'm going to do it a little bit different. I am going to actually write these out. So if I had z and z over z, 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 cross them all so you don't think they're 2's. And then I crossed them out one by one with the matching in the bottom. How many z's do I have?
4.
And where are they? The bottom. That's what I wanted to show you by writing it out. You need a placeholder in the top. A very good placeholder in math is always a 1. Now, that second bullet point you wrote down in your rules was something about the leftovers. This is what I was talking about with the leftovers. So do you see how I started with more z's in the bottom? So your leftover z's, after you subtract these, should be in the bottom. Don't mess around with negative exponents. Don't look at it as 2 minus 6. Just think of it as 6 minus 2, and then where do your leftovers go? What are your questions? All right, here's number 5. So where are my x's going to end up in my answer? Top or bottom? Bottom. I have more x's in the bottom to start, so that's where my x's are going to end up in my answer. What's the difference between 7 and 5? Like, what's 7 minus 5?
3.
Not the third. Double check your subtraction. It's 2. So I have x squared, and that goes to the bottom. My leftovers go to wherever the more x's were. Wherever the bigger exponent started, that's where your leftovers go. How do I show that this is the bottom of a fraction? Because there's a line. Well, what goes on the top of the line? A 1. You need the placeholder of a 1. Questions? All right, check out the 6. I have y to the first over y to the second. So where do I have more y's? The bottom. So my leftover y's are going to go to the bottom. How many will I have? Yeah, so this is just y to the first. I need a 1 on the top. One of those 1's doesn't need to be there. One of those 1's absolutely needs to be there. Which one's which?
The one exponent does not need.
The exponent doesn't need to be there. The one in the top does. All right, questions on this so far?
So, when the numerator is bigger than the denominator, so I go from the big number to
Yeah, just go to wherever the bigger number is for the exponents and do the subtraction like normal. You shouldn't be getting negative exponents. There are such thing as negative exponents. We'll get to that, but for now, just put the leftovers wherever the bigger exponent was to begin with. All right, here's number 7. So now we're just looking at more variables at the same time. So x's go with x's. So where are my leftover x's going to be?
On the top.
On the top. And what's 3 minus 2? So I'm going to have x to the first on the top. Now go to your y's. Y to the 5th over y to the 3rd. Y to the 2nd. Good. Do I need an over 1? No. You could write it if you want. We won't count it wrong, but it's just not necessary. Neither is this one. So a 1 on the bottom is not important, but a 1 on the top is extremely important. All right? Check out number 8. Same sort of problem. We have to go letter by letter. So a squared over a to the 4th gives me what? Where? A to the 2nd on the bottom. Good. For the b's, I need to give it an exponent. So b to the 1st over b to the 3rd is b to the
Second on the bottom.
b to the 2nd on the bottom. How do I know these are on the bottom?
Put a 1 on the top.
Put a 1 on the top. Good. What are your questions? All right. Here's number 9, and then there's just an extra problem just for fun. Number 9, go through the x's. X to the 5th over x to the 6th gives us what? 1 or x to the 1st?
X to the first.
X to the 1st, and that goes on the bottom because I had more x's on the bottom to begin with. Next, y to the 2nd over y to the 1st. Y to the 1st, and that goes on top because I started with more y's on the top. Z's, I have z to the 3rd over z to the 1st, which is z to the, and that goes on the top. Very good. You can move the x over a little bit if you want. Doesn't need to be right in the front. Alright, and then here's a bonus problem. You can write it if you want. You don't have to write it. You can just follow along. So for this one, how many x's am I going to have? And where are they going to be?
X to the first one, X on the bottom.
Okay, x to the 1st on the bottom. Good. What about my y's?
Y to the first on the bottom.
Y to the 1st on the bottom. Good. What about my z's? Z to the 1st on the bottom. Good. And then what do I need on the top? 1. All right. Wonderful. Now, I'm going to point to a 1. You tell me if it's important or not important. Not important. Important. Not important. Not important. Important. Not important.
I never realized how stupid that word sounds.
All right. Do you you don't like the word important now that we said it so many times? All right. The exponents of 1 are not important. The 1 in the top of the fraction is important, okay? It's important that you know which ones are important.
Sounds weird.
Important, important, important.
It's like
Any questions? So look, I'm going to go back and get rid of this guy because it's not important. Okay? The one over there. Any questions? It's important that you understand this. All right, here comes your homework.